Welcome back to the program. I'm Zev Brenner. It's been quite a while since we last had Elan Kornblum. He is the publisher of Great Kosher Restaurants Media Group. We were with his parents, I believe, on a cruise or on vacation long back, but good to have you on the program, Elan.
Good to be back. Yes, long time, but good to hear from you. Thank you very much.
So you know what's going on. You have your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the kosher food world and the restaurants. So one of the things that people are very concerned about kosher culinary delights. I mean, let's be honest.
Sure, this is very important. People talk about this more than they talk about doctors and lawyers. It's food. People love talking about food in restaurants, so we love it too.
In fact, we did a piece on the Entenmann's, whether it's going to remain kosher or not. I even got response from Germany, believe it or not.
People like that. Their donuts and cookies. Can't take that away from them.
So what's going on? According to sources, I think even the Forward did a piece on it this week, that in the last year, 2018, about 15 kosher restaurants closed. So people think about the growth of kosher food, but when you hear 15 closed and a lot closed at the end of the year, so what's going on?
All right, so a couple of things. One is this has been happening for decades. Since I started in the industry 15 years ago, it's always been a cycle. You always have restaurants coming and going. Unfortunately, that's just the industry. People are going to open up a restaurant. It's going to succeed or fail for many reasons. And so people need to know that it's not something that is surprising to me in terms of people closing, but yes, the amount of restaurants that have closed within a short amount of time, within the area. I think what people were focusing on the last few weeks was the Upper West Side, which is your hometown, your neighborhood, and I think it got a kind of a beating the last month, really when people started hearing almost every day another restaurant closing in that area. So, again, there's probably more restaurants. In fact, I posted on my Facebook group on Monday, we do like a 2018 year in review, and I counted over 60 places, or even more, 70 places that closed within 2018.
Wow.
However, there's over 100 that opened in 2018.
Now, were there any big names that closed in 2018 throughout the year?
There was huge. Vabeni's been around for almost 20 years, if not more. So that was a big surprise, although there were rumblings every year, that the lease was up, and it was a couple of reasons. There was a problem with the structure and the maintenance, and it had to be fixed. It was going to be a huge expense, and the owner just said, you know what, time to close up. Had a great run, and waited. The lease kind of ran out, and he didn't renew it, and he kind of left. So that was a huge surprise after all these years, but. There were a lot of restaurants that have been around the last few years. That was sad to see. Whether we talk about Manhattan or Brooklyn or even Queens and Long Island, it was everywhere. There was closings everywhere, but again, there was openings just as much, if not more. Although the percentage is not that great. You don't want every 2 restaurants, 1 closes. That's not good. That's not a good ratio. It's not that bad, but. This is the nature. This is the many reasons. The rents are much higher. They keep getting increased. Expenses for ingredients, for supervision. The more competition. It just everything is minimum wage is going up or has gone up. So all these factors. I think there are some restaurants that saw the writing on the wall and said, we're not going to make it, and kind of cut their losses and stop the bleeding and just close.
But you said, I think, of course, one of the biggest culprits is rising rents, and also kosher supervision. Some restaurants pay a premium price to have kosher supervision and can't afford that. So if they go especially with the top end, high end, the hashgacha.
Right, it's more mainstream they call it, or more known. People throw the word reliable. It's each person it's up to themselves to understand what's important for them. But yeah, it certainly is expensive. Between the certificate and then the mashgiach, which is really a full-time job for many of these restaurants, and a lot of them are there to watch and clean the greens, and it's tough. A lot of them try to do a mashgiach manager, so kind of helps a little bit. Not every supervision wants that, but it's tough.
When you say not every supervision wants that, Elan Kornblum is our guest. We're looking at the upheaval in kosher restaurants in New York. Over 60 to 70 have closed in the past year.
Well, around the country.
Around the country. Okay. In the New York metropolitan area, what number would you put it at?
Majority 40, 35.
Still a large number.
It's large enough, yes, for sure.
But I think a restaurant, when they pay a mashgiach to be there full time, they expect the mashgiach not to sit and have his nose in a sefer. They expect him to work, whether it's as a maitre d' or do something.
That's been the debate for many years. The restaurants don't like it when they're just sitting and just watching, and then the supervision say, "Listen, my guy is not there to take orders and not there to sit people. His job is just to look at the greens and look at the lettuce and make sure what's coming in. And if he's sitting someone, that he's not watching the kitchen." It's not so easy. There's a lot of factors that people don't realize, but this is an expense that the restaurants have to take. But look, there's plenty of restaurants that have made it for decades. There's, we talk about restaurants that close. We don't talk about the restaurants that have been open for 10, 20, 30 years. Abigail's, Mr. Broadway, even new restaurants, that have been Mike's Bistro and Reserve Cut, and Murray's been a while. So all these restaurants, they're doing nicely. It's high-end restaurants, so it's a little easier because your margins are higher. But there are restaurants that make it, but it's very, very difficult. You got to have a great concept, great staff, obviously great food. You got to have everything, and even then, it's tough. It happens, but it's not for the faint of heart.
That's true. Even though, and we spoke about some of the pitfalls and some of them that are closed, but when they make it big. I believe there was an article in a regular business publication, the name escapes me, regarding Reserve Cut, that it's a very profitable restaurant. I forgot how many millions of dollars it generates
every year. It was in Forbes. In fact, I was quoted in that article, actually. I think it was in Forbes that had that. And yes, there are restaurants that are able to turn over tables and get $100 a person bills and busy throughout the week. Obviously you need to have lunch and dinner and catering and takeout and delivery, and so you really need to make sure you're on the ball with everything. But there are restaurants that make it, but it's these mom and pop kind of places that are just on these very high rent avenues, Amsterdam Avenue, and in the middle of Manhattan, that just swallow you up. $12,000 for a small little hole in the wall. It's almost impossible to make it when you're serving burgers. Big Bang Burger, we wrote about them for months. They were struggling. We put it out almost like an SOS to people to kind of help them, and it did help them for a month or two. But it's a marathon, and so you can't sustain it after so much time.
But is that the case? Because you mentioned Big Bang Burger, which closed on the west side, but you had Amsterdam Burger about 20 blocks or 15 blocks up that was so successful that they're in the process of moving to Columbus Avenue to a much bigger space because of their success. So how do you account for, they have high rents where no matter where they were in Manhattan, but then they're going to have an astronomical rent at the new location when they open up.
Right. So again, it comes down to, obviously, your restaurant needs to be on the top of its game. Not to say that Big Bang wasn't, but Amsterdam was a huge hit from the very beginning. It had more space. It was a cool place to go. Mike's Bistro is behind it, and so it had a lot of energy and all that. So I think that there are just some restaurants that have it, and they have capital behind it, And again, it's a lot of it is just the food, the staff, mazel. You just got to have some luck sometimes, and kind of get on the on the right path, and it snowballs in a good way and in a bad way. And so hopefully Amsterdam will open up in a few months. So everyone's anxious to see how that happens.
Well, it'll be great to see, because in their spot, the rumor is, I think you first broke it, Elan, that in the old Amsterdam Burger spot on Amsterdam and 92nd Street is going to open up another restaurant, the chain restaurant.
Yeah, Holy Schnitzel is opening up. We broke that about a month or two ago, and so the guys have 5 locations in Brooklyn, Staten Island, and Long Island, and Queens, and now in Manhattan. And so this is a great example of just a restaurant that is expanding. So you have more that are opening up, and so he wanted to get a spot in Manhattan, and it was good enough for him. It was just the right size, and I think we're going to have in 2019. You'll get more restaurants coming in. 2018 towards the end, you got some leaving. In 2019, you got some coming.
Like, for example, what's coming aside from Holy Schnitzel coming to the West Side? What else is coming?
In terms of Upper West Side?
No, in general. What's the new kosher restaurants to look out for?
Manhattan, if you want to talk about Manhattan, you got Wall Street Grill that's going to open up in a few weeks, hopefully.
Is that the one that's supposed to be competition to Reserve Cut?
Yeah.
Because they've been talking about it for a number of years now.
They have. This is another point about the city. Dealing with the city, dealing with Department of Buildings and health codes and permits and violations, and it's crazy. So yes, that's been in the works for 3 years. Imagine paying rent all this time, and so that's why it's even more difficult. But you have, let's see, Coffee Bean is supposed to be coming into the city in 2019, so that should be a welcome. They're coming back. They were. A couple of years ago, they were here, and now they're coming back.
You're talking about the chain from California?
Yeah.
So where are they coming back to, the original locations?
I don't think so, but I don't know where. They did announce they're opening up in Manhattan, and they're opening up kosher locations, so they haven't said where yet. But
the kosher Starbucks alternative.
Yeah, you can imagine Midtown will be, but Manhattan has gotten a bunch of restaurants. Boru Boru opened up in your Upper West Side, so that's a new restaurant, and you had West Side Wok. That took over Gan Asia, so that was kind of
that was touch and go for a while. They opened, they closed, they're open again.
Again, it's dealing with the city. They had to gut the whole place. They had to renovate that small little place, but still, everything has to be done the right way, and so they had to wait and get permits and all that. And they're still not fully open. It's still a very soft opening. They had to close for a day or so to get some stuff taken care of, but you have places like Barnea Bistro in Midtown East that opened. You have Abaita, there's a nice dairy restaurant that opened in Manhattan. You have Noga on the Lower East Side that opened in Manhattan. So you had plenty, you had a nice amount of restaurants in Manhattan that opened. And in Brooklyn, you got dozens of new places over the past year. So,
by the way, I was impressed. I went for the first time to UN Plaza Grill. What a gorgeous restaurant.
Yep, another new restaurant. Exactly, another new restaurant that opened. Beautiful, upscale, right near the UN, and certainly that's that's what you're seeing more. Seeing a lot of these upscale places, and they seem to be making it.
But the problem is you have Manhattan prices in Brooklyn. Some of the great and by the way, some people have said, and I want to get your opinion. Elan Kornblum is our guest. Great Kosher Magazine's publishing group is what he founded. Is that number one, that Brooklyn in some ways may have taken over as the kosher culinary capital of New York, but the prices of some of the meals in Brooklyn are comparable to Manhattan.
In a way, they hope that people will say, we'll save on gas, we'll save on time, we'll come to a local restaurant and still be able to charge. Again, maybe not as much, but really close. There are some restaurants, The Loft and Wolf and Lamb and Bordeaux and Glalicar and Tea Fusion. A lot of these restaurants, Bison and Bourbon, nice upscale places that are not cheap, but people are staying. Yeah, people are staying local in Long Island. People are, let's say Doma. People in five towns used to go to Manhattan. Maybe not as much now because you have Doma and you have Prime Bistro and you have 550. So it's true. There aren't people who are traveling as much and staying local because there are more options now for them.
So is it to be successful, do you have to be more of a high-end restaurant? They're the ones that are poised for success?
It seems, again, it's almost like the fast food can make it because, the volume and the low overhead and also the higher end with the high margin. So it's
like the middle class is being squeezed, either the high end or the...
In a way, but it's kind of being faded out, maybe a gray area. But there's no signs to it. There's so many examples of middle-of-the-road places that are doing fantastic. Chimichurri in the Five Towns, Traditions, Essen Deli. There's so many examples of, nice restaurants, good value, not high-end, not fast food, that are making it. So there's tons of examples on both sides of why restaurants are succeeding, why they're not. It's really very tough to analyze.
No, it certainly is. And before we let you go, I think part of that whole end of the year negative look at the closing of kosher restaurants, also especially the Seasons food chain, was out of business. They were in bankruptcy. They were all bought with the exception of the Manhattan store, which just closed a couple of weeks ago. That also lended uncertainty to what's happening in the kosher marketplace.
Again, it's just maybe just the end of the year, the rents, and with minimum wage, it just maybe might be a coincidence that it's happening towards the end of the year, all at one time. But it's just, I think the kosher market is very strong. This is an exciting time. There are, again, new restaurants opening. The whole, especially, we talk about food and restaurants on my Facebook group all the time, and there's more talk about it. There's people more excited about it. Social media has allowed people to have their voice heard. The Food Network and all these Instagram and platforms are allowing people to talk about it more. I think people are talking about it more, so you hear about it more. It was happening for so many years, but I think because so much information is out there and so many media and so much platforms that you hear it from all over, and so I think that might heighten the whoa, what's going on? So I think it's a combination of just many different factors, but also just a lot of people are talking about it.
Certainly are. Now, as we close, there are some kosher restaurant chains. We mentioned Holy Schnitzel. You have a couple of others. Would Holy Schnitzel be the biggest kosher restaurant chain around the country today? Or there is another one?
Carlos and Gabby's. You have Brooklyn. You have Queens. Well, yeah, Queens. You have Five Towns. Maybe another one that's going to open. Secret. I can't say yet, but there might be a breaking news coming up. So that might be. Chains are not as. The whole Dougie's chain, unfortunately, it's tough now. Only a few locations left. But
Kosher Delight obviously used to be, and not anymore. So it's really Carlos and Gabi and Holy Schnitz. Those are the two main players as far as having multiple locations.
Yeah, if you go to the West Coast, you have Fish Grill that has a few places, and there's another one opening up somewhere. I can't say, it's a secret also. But you have, in Florida, you have a couple of restaurant groups that own 4 restaurants, and so there are these pockets of these chains and these restaurant groups that are, really healthy and keep opening up, and so there's a lot to be thankful for and to be excited for in 2019. I don't want people to think that this is a demise. I think it's just you'll see like the stock market. It'll go down for a couple of months and then it'll shoot back up, and you'll see more restaurants opening up every few days. And you're like, you know what? It's healthy, and so I'm looking forward to it.
Elan Kornblum, the publisher of the growing empire chain, the Great Kosher Restaurants Media Group. Thank you for being with us. People want more information. How can they find you?
So our biggest platform, thank God, is our Facebook group, Great Kosher Restaurant Foodies. We're about to hit 50,000 members. It is the largest kosher food group in the world, and so we're proud of that. Of course, our website, Great Kosher Restaurants, our Instagram, Great Kosher Restaurants. We have a newsletter. We have an app. Busy time for us.
Keep it going. Thank you for giving us some food for thought.
Yes, my pleasure.
And we're going to be right back. Don't go away. Stay tuned.